psychiatry. It's what happens to anyone in our society in the course of one's whole life cycle. You know, whether one's a baby being born, or a mother in childbirth, or whether one's an old person who is too frail to take care of himself. It's what happens. It's the quality of care that is going to happen when one is unable to take care of oneself and is at the mercy of other human beings. Now, I don't think that the whole of psychiatry is a dead loss by any means. For instance, my father is an old, frail man who's lost his memory. About 10 years ago completely. And my mother's a frail old lady, and she can't take care of him. And he's been in the psychotic geriatric ward of a mental hospital in Glasgow now for the last 10 years. Now, the people there have taken care of him and all the other people like him in an exemplary manner. He's treated with courtesy and respect. He's not degraded or subject to humiliation. He's treated, I think, with genuine care and warmth. Now, that can be said of a lot of places, and that's marvellous. That is absolutely marvellous. At the same time, there are a lot of places where that doesn't happen. That's one thing. And then the way women are treated in childbirth in many places now, and babies are treated in childbirth, makes me cringe. I mean, it makes, when I saw babies being born in many contexts in hospital, not everywhere, not always, you know, but enough places, to make me feel it's very risky to, I mean, if I could choose where I was going to be born, I would be very careful about it, because it's the luck of the draw. Sometimes it's very pleasant, but sometimes it's very brutal.
You've changed.
It's a bit of a responsibility. I sometimes feel it heavy on my shoulders, but on the other hand, I'm a psychoanalyst, you know, and psychoanalysts are very used to receiving other people's projections upon them, and once one writes about the things that I write about, then I suppose one has to expect that a lot of people will be looking to one for answers when I've been trying to ask questions all my life. I mean, if I had a hundredth of the answers that a lot of people think I have, I might be a lot happier myself. I don't know. To say why. I'm writing in this book as a human being, first of all. I mean, any scientist is first and foremost a human being. And then I'm looking at my own life, both as a human being and, as if you like, as a scientist. I originally called that book that you draw out
The Facts of Life.
The Facts of Life. I thought that was a bit pretentious.
It's heavy.
A bit heavy.
For the general reader, I think.
Yeah. A bit heavy for me too.
Tell me about...
Well, I was an only child. And I grew up in the south side of Glasgow, and borders between slums and lower middle class respectability. And
which were you, slum or lower?
no, I was. My father was a lieutenant in the Royal Air Corps. He was principal baritone in the Glasgow University Chapel Choir. And it was a house in pinched economic circumstances, my parents struggling away to carve out what they felt was a decent life for themselves and for me. in circumstances that neither of them liked very much. Neither of my parents liked the environment in which they felt circumstances had condemned them to live in. And before I went to school, they kept me, as far as possible, very sheltered from that environment. So I suppose I had, well, I definitely had by comparison a very closed life. And I didn't have, not only didn't have brothers or sisters to play with, but I didn't have other children to play with.
But they didn't let you out at all?
Not out by myself, but that wasn't entirely, I mean, the streets of Glasgow are sort of fairly rough, and just down the road, you know, a lot of tuberculosis, rickets, infectious diseases of different kinds, skin conditions, etc. And they wanted to protect me as much as possible from pollution, you know. But once I went to school, then I had a great time of it, because they didn't mind me playing out in the street with other kids and so on. So I was right out there playing away.
Do you feel that had rather an effect on you?
Well, it had some sort of effect, or maybe it's difficult to assess whether that has an effect, but I can see a pattern that is still a contrast in my life between enjoying the extremes of being conviviality and company, and I enjoy people. You know, I enjoy being with people and meeting people, and there's nothing I enjoy more, I think, than the company of other human beings. At the same time, I also very much enjoy being alone and solitary, and very seldom feel lonely, you know, in being alone. I like both.
And you're saying...
At any rate, that started. At that stage, I hadn't any choice but to find a way of passing the time without the company of other people of my age. You know.
Do you think...
As you know, I've looked into that a lot, and I've particularly studied the environmental side of that rather than the genetic side of that. But if you look at the genetic evidence, there seems to be a great deal of evidence on the one hand that no matter what one's environment is, that one turns out how one was predestined to do. And
predestined?
Genetically.
Yeah.
You know. Because you get identical twins who are reared apart in widely different circumstances, and a number of studies that suggest that even though the family circumstances and the environment generally were very different, when you compare their characters, their personalities, and their rhythm and style of life, when they grow up, they've got a great deal more in common than you would expect, given that diversity of environment. That's because they come from the same egg, they've got the same genetic constitution. On the other hand, there's a compelling sense from, I think everyone feels, that their own life has, their own past has been important in the company of people speaking in a southern Glasgow accent. I wouldn't be talking in that accent now. And that must go for, I met, for instance, an anthropologist from America who specializes in what he calls kinesics, that's to say the movements that people make. And in the first 2 minutes of meeting him, he picked me out as having come from the south side of Glasgow because of, he said, the way my eyebrow and forehead movement went, which he said is a typical Lowland Scot forehead.
I can't. You've been criticised.
No, I'm not saying that at all. There are all sorts of families, you know, and there are some families that are, I think, very delightful places to be in. And I mean, speaking personally for my own present family, I've got 3 children at that I live with, my wife and so on, I think one of the greatest boons of my life is that I'm able to spend, because largely of the books that I've written and people have read, a great deal of time just passing my time with my own family, and I really enjoy that. And I enjoy the company of my wife and the company of my children. However, I mean, it has to be said that unfortunately it's true for a lot of people that they don't enjoy each other's company too much, and that's very unfortunate. And that doesn't mean to say that one is then condemning the family in any way at all. No, I would. Yes, that's a major dilemma. For a number of years, while I was working at the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, I studied the families of people who were in mental distress. And I also did a study of, quote, normal families. That's to say, families that were living to their own satisfaction, who weren't, hadn't fallen into financial distress or any trouble with the law or any trouble, serious physical trouble or anything, who were living to their own satisfaction, etc. And I've never published that work, partly because I really don't want to give those people who take scientific findings for political purposes grist to develop human engineering technology to interfere with the lives of people who would be interfered with.